So as the mother, as the father of your family, as the leader of your family, what are some of the practices or tools that you can share with your children to help them become more emotionally mature, let's call it? This can be experienced as emotionally stable. Could be about emotional regulation. But often parents experience kids that are lacking those tools, let's call them, that help them feel their emotions, open up to that energy. And often there are these things, good morning, that you may take for granted. They come so natural to you that you don't even think of them as tools or practices. And it's not that important to give it that label. I'm just giving it the label so you know what I'm talking about. But by offering these tools and practices for your children, you're sort of equipping them for life. You're empowering them. It's really part of growing up. Like I said before, everyone grows old, but not everyone grows up. And growing up is really about developing that emotional responsibility. It's not all about it, but it's one of the marks of maturity. So things like some breathing practices to really slow down, relax, get into the body, feel the sensation of the breath. Really to be present to one's emotions, to be embodied, to not get caught up in the emotion through stories, narratives, getting entangled in that emotion, but to simply be the space for that emotion, to have the greater capacity to feel those emotions fully by opening up through relaxation, so that your child can process those emotions fully. You'll see the connection to when your children are sort of going through some hard times, those phases as they mature, the stages, and see how there's sort of this influx of emotion, but there is a lack of the ability to process. There isn't the capacity to hold those emotions. One gets caught up in the reactivity. It looks like tantrums and a lot of unusual behavior, let's call it. But you'd be surprised how potent, how powerful some of these practices are, that you don't share with your children from a place of trying to fix them, but just empowering them. You've been there. You've experienced it. So you're sharing wisdom with your children. And like I said, these emotions are part of life. You're equipping them. You're empowering them so that they don't feel disabled by these emotions. Another practice that you could actually share or structure with your family could be actually more of a family thing that you enjoy together. A walk in nature, to go to the beach perhaps, to just get outside, fresh air, sunshine. You take a break from the homework or your job, do something as a family. Loosen up, lighten up. Could be to play catch or kick around a soccer ball, or any sort of physical activity outside is easily overlooked. And it's so valuable, it's so effective at helping your children sort of get out of their head or break up the day. And that's something that you can set, that rhythm, that routine. Maybe it's on Sunday afternoons, or on the weekend, or maybe it's after dinner, a short little walk, something like that. That's another one. It could be really finding what your son or daughter is into and finding something to connect with them that allows them to really feel their body more. A nighttime routine could be like a little massage, self-massage you can teach your child. You can give your child a massage, little foot rub, back massage. Could be just a simple stretching routine at night. And this sort of sets that rhythm of, at the end of the day, we unwind. And when we unwind, we open up, we relax. And in that relaxation, in that openness, we process those emotions that may have built up throughout the day. When children or adults don't have a way to process these emotions, it's like a pressure cooker. It just builds up pressure, and it either like overboils or just bursts. And that's that sort of tantrum. That's that time when they get out of control, they spin out of control, and they throw a fit in the store or whatever it is. And this is by no way, shape, or form labeling something as bad, or that's not okay, or that shouldn't happen. it's just simply sharing some of these practices, these tools that I share with my kids and see how effective they are, and see sort of that gap that when I was growing up, I was naturally exploring myself and come to enjoy these practices, these tools, not because I've learned it from some book or someone else, but it was just this inner guidance. And seeing how effective it is, and then growing up later and seeing it's sort of like, you show up and you have a full toolbox and someone beside you doesn't even have the toolbox. So then it's simply just sharing some of those tools so that they can do the inner work, let's call it, keeping with that analogy. So the little bit of a stretching routine could be a little bit more self-care, washing your face together, brushing your teeth together. Could be making your daughter or your son a bath, to just create that sacred space for them so that they start learning to take time for themselves, to honor themselves, to love themselves, that they devote some time to relaxing, unwinding, opening up. And this is really guiding one into more of their feminine essence. It's this inner guidance. When you're following that intuition, you're listening to your body, then you'll naturally follow that intuition. You might say not to push that hard that day and to slow down. Might feel some sort of flare up in the body, an ache or a pain. It requires you to listen. What is your body saying? And you get good at really listening. And that listening is really that feminine energy. It's the receptivity. Allows you to really listen to your heart. And you start following it. And you see you're naturally led into more and more wisdom by following this intuition. So you develop this, what we can call emotional intelligence, that when you look around, most people in our modern society lack this emotional intelligence. So you see, it's almost like seeing like an age gap. Like you're an adult and everyone's kids. And really that's that spiritual maturity, or you want to call it emotional maturity. And you're seeing that gap. So this is to, one, embody that spiritual, that emotional maturity, because that's ultimately the most powerful, is through your embodiment. You're modeling that emotional regulation. You're showing them what's natural. What's natural could be your nighttime routine, your morning routine, and they start attuning to that energy that you embody. Your energy is setting that natural rhythm for them, and it starts guiding them. They start seeing what's natural and what's unnatural, and through that contrast, they experience it for themselves. It's not something that you even have to tell them. They can experience it. But you can also guide them into that contrast, pointing out, seeing how, you see how relaxed you feel. You see how you're not caught up in the story, blaming, complaining. And you start guiding them to more and more peace, more and more harmony. and they start integrating these practices that you are showing them. Not really that you're seeing them from a place of tools and practices, but more so, like I see it, is it's just a natural way of life. It's just natural. And that's what they start, I don't know the word here, adopting, integrating, living. There's the word. They start living that natural way. And you see that they benefit greatly from it. They're more emotionally stable. They're more capable. They have the capacity to handle all of these different emotions of the human experience. And you start seeing that they're maturing right in front of your eyes. And you start seeing actually the difference between your children and their friends. That emotional maturity really becomes that contrast that you're seeing. So don't overlook some of these practices, these tools, this way. Now, of course, maybe I'll just add in the caution here, is don't try and give your children these tools in the heat of the moment. When they're kicking and screaming in the grocery store, or they're throwing a tantrum as they get in the car on their way to school, that's not the time to give them some practice. At that point, it's sort of too late. And any sort of suggestion at that time, when they're caught up in and as that reactivity, in and as that chaos, is just simply resisted. It actually feels like, to them, like you're giving them something extra to do that is going to make the situation worse. It's like adding extra pressure. It's usually seen through the lens that you're blaming them or shaming them or making them feel like they're wrong or something like that. So it's about really just, in that time, modeling the natural energy, being that containment, that spaciousness that contains, that grounds the energy. And through you embodying it, you model it to them, which is far more effective than actually trying to get them to do something. And then as the heat of the moment cools down and you see that the energy has changed, perhaps a different environment, later in the day, after they've gone to school, then you can reflect back and say something like, you know, that tantrum that you had out on the driveway as we were getting into the car on our way to school this morning, what was that all about? And they can see now from a different perspective as you open up a reflection. And then at that time you can offer, well, that's the time when you can take that deep breath, the same deep breath that we practice at night, doing 10 deep breaths before we go to bed. You put your hand on your heart or your hand on your belly and you feel the sensations of the body. And you're giving them the tool that they can implement the next time they find themselves in that situation. Is it going to happen overnight? No, it takes time. But they start seeing, and once they start having a positive result through implementing some of those practices and tools, they see how powerful it is. Oh yeah, when I just took that one deep breath, it calmed everything down, and then I had that clarity to then take a different action. The action came from response instead of reactivity. And that makes, good morning.
Good morning.
And that makes a huge difference. And that positive experience with the tool that you give them is going to be their own encouragement to then use it again. You won't even, at that point, you won't have to tell them how to use it, when to use it, because it's their own experience. It's like someone trying to, I don't know, break fishing line with their hands, and they're struggling. They're even bleeding. It's painful to try and break fishing line with your hands. Some would say impossible. And then you give them a pair of scissors, line cutters one day, and you say, hey, use this next time you find yourself in this situation. And they have that positive experience. Oh, it worked. And it's that tool that they don't get rid of. They just put it in their toolbox. They carry it with them. I'm gonna keep that in my tackle box, because next time the line gets tangled, I'll just cut it. And I won't try and cut it with my hands, because that was much more painful last time. Hello.
Hi.
So they have that contrast, the struggle, the pain, the suffering, and then they have the effectiveness of the tool that you gave them, like the wire cutter or the line cutter or the scissors. And because it works so effectively, they keep that tool with them, and then they are more likely to use that tool in a very similar situation. And this is what I meant by you can equip your children with these simple tools to help them in their life. So if you're ready to start integrating some of these tools yourself, if you're ready to start sharing these tools with your children and better lead your family by integrating more of who you and what you truly are, and ultimately embodying your true nature, then I invite you to join me on the journey of truth.